Have you ever built something for years, only to watch it disappear in a single night? Not slowly, not with warning, just gone, while you stood there, unable to do a single thing about it. Maybe it wasn't a fire for you. Maybe it was a business that collapsed, a marriage that ended, a plan that fell apart right before it was supposed to work. But you know the feeling. That moment where you look at your own life and think, I have to start completely over, from nothing. My name is Daniel and welcome to Timeless Lessons Hub, a place where every story carries a lesson for real life. Today's story follows a potter who lost his entire workshop in one night and the strange, unlikely place he found the will to begin again. Stay with me until the end. This one might sit with you longer than you expect. Samuel had been a potter for 19 years, working out of a small shop near the river in a trading town called Cardwell. He wasn't the most famous potter in the region, but he was steady, reliable. The kind of craftsman merchants trusted with large orders because his work never cracked in shipping and his prices never changed once agreed upon. He had a wife, Anna, 2 children, and a workshop stacked floor to ceiling with finished pots, unfired clay, and a kiln he had rebuilt with his own hands twice over the years. Then came the night. The warehouse next door caught fire from an overturned lantern, and the wind carried the flames straight into his shop before anyone could stop it. By morning, there was nothing left but broken pottery, ash, and the blackened shell of a kiln that had taken him 3 months to build the second time. 19 years of work, gone in a single night, nobody had asked for, and nobody could have prevented. Here's the part nobody warns you about when disaster hits. It isn't just the loss, it's the silence afterward. For 2 weeks, Samuel barely spoke. He walked through the wreckage every morning out of habit, though there was nothing left to check on. Merchants, who once placed standing orders, quietly began buying from other potters in town, not out of unkindness, just necessity. Their own businesses couldn't wait for Samuel to recover. Anna tried, gently, to talk to him about starting again. He brushed it off each time. With what? He'd say. I have no clay, no kiln, no tools, no customers left waiting on me. I'm 41 years old, and I have less right now than I did when I was 19 and just starting out. He said that sentence so many times it started to sound less like a complaint and more like a fact he'd decided to accept permanently. It was his youngest daughter, Ruth, only 7 years old, who changed something. Not through a wise saying, not through some perfectly timed piece of advice, but simply by not knowing any better. One afternoon, Samuel found her sitting near the ruined workshop, hands covered in mud from the riverbank, carefully shaping a small, lopsided cup. "What are you doing?" he asked, more tired than curious. "Making a cup," Ruth said, as if it were obvious. "For you, since yours all broke." Samuel almost laughed. It wasn't even close to a real cup, the walls uneven, one side thicker than the other, nowhere near strong enough to hold water without leaking. He nearly said so. But Ruth held it up proudly, mud-streaked and grinning, entirely unaware that this was supposed to be the moment her father's business had ended. "It's not very good yet," she said, studying it herself, "but I'll make another one tomorrow." She said it so simply, not as encouragement aimed at him. She wasn't old enough to be strategic about comforting her father. She just meant it literally. Today's cup wasn't good, so tomorrow she'd make another one. Samuel sat there a long moment, watching his daughter turn a lump of riverbank mud in her small hands, already planning her next attempt before this one had even finished failing. He didn't have some dramatic realization right there in the mud. That's not usually how it works. But something about watching a 7-year-old fail at pottery without a single trace of shame followed him for days afterward. She hadn't looked at her lopsided cup and thought, "I am now a failure at pottery." She had simply thought, "This one isn't good, I'll try again tomorrow." The failure and her identity had never once touched each other in her mind. Samuel realized, slowly, that he had been doing something very different. He'd been treating 19 years of burned pottery as proof about who he was now, instead of simply as pottery that had burned. The kiln was gone, the clay was gone, the customers had mostly moved on, but none of that had reached inside him and removed 19 years of knowing exactly how heat moves through clay, exactly how much water a glaze needs, exactly which cracks meant a piece was ruined and which ones would seal fine in the firing. The fire had taken the pots. It had never touched the potter. Samuel started small, smaller than he had in 19 years. He dug clay from the same riverbank Ruth had used, built a crude open fire pit instead of a proper kiln, and made simple cups and bowls he could sell cheaply in the market for whatever coin people had. It was humbling in a way that stung every single day. Merchants who once negotiated large orders with him now watched him sell single cups from a blanket in the market square. Some offered pity, a few offered outright mockery. Samuel kept working anyway, not because he had regained his confidence all at once, but because he had finally noticed what his daughter already understood without needing to be taught, that today's failed attempt and tomorrow's next attempt were two completely separate things, and only one of them was actually in his control. Each cup he sold bought him a little more clay. Each season brought him a little closer to rebuilding a proper kiln. It took him nearly 2 years to return to where he'd been the night before the fire, but he wasn't the same potter who had lost everything that night. He was more careful now, more patient with beginners in the trade, because he remembered exactly what it felt like to shape something clumsy and start over anyway, and he kept one object on a shelf in his rebuilt workshop where he could see it every single day. Ruth's first cup, still lopsided, still leaking. If you ever tried to use it, he never fired it properly. He never needed to. It wasn't there to hold water. It was there to remind him of the exact moment he stopped confusing a ruined thing with a ruined person. So, let me ask you something Ruth never had to ask herself, because she never learned to doubt it in the first place. When you lost whatever you're grieving right now, a job, a relationship, years of work that seemed to disappear overnight, did it really take everything from you? Or did it take the evidence while leaving the skill, the character, and the capability fully intact? Zero is not the same as worthless. Starting over is not the same as starting as nobody. You don't have to rebuild from nothing just because your circumstances did. You get to rebuild from everything you already are. If this story reached you today, consider subscribing to Timeless Lessons Hub. Every week, we share stories from ordinary life, carrying truth that outlasts the moment you're in. Because sometimes the fire that burns everything down isn't the end of your story. It's just the part right before you find out what was never yours to lose.